So Spurs, we're going to talk about Spurs today on the channel. You can see a few here, and we're going to go through them, talk about what they are, how they work, why you would use one over the other, and then maybe some safety stuff at the end. I'm going to show you my go-to Spurs first. These are some Tom Balding Spurs, medium-sized shank, real soft rowel. They are awesome. We'll talk a little bit about those in comparison to some others. When you're looking at Spurs, you really have to think about the function, why you're going to wear them, for what reason. I recommend, especially in Western riding, always wear Spurs. Even on the first ride on a colt, I like to put them on so that we don't have this introduction phase later where they've never had that happen to them. And so I'll kind of show you what I might use for that. The next thing to think about is, like I said, what you're going to use them for. So if you're riding a broke horse that needs, some gentle reminding, if you have one that's real touchy, you might do something different. The biggest thing though is basically how you ride. So how long your legs are. And the general rule is the longer your legs, the longer your shank. So I will show you this in comparison to this. That's a shank difference there. Long shank, short shank. That's the first thing you should do. And the reason for that is typically when your legs hang down, if you have a short shank and a long leg, your spur is going to have a hard time coming back up to the animal to touch them. So that's something to consider. The other thing too is if you're riding and you're going to use them a lot, I recommend having a long shank, maybe even if you're a shorter leg person, just so when you are using them, you don't have to pick your leg up. You can just kind of turn your toe. We might do a video kind of about that as well. The next thing is, once again, how often you're using them and why. So here is two examples. I'll just show you different rowel types. Okay, so this is kind of a pounds per square inch theory. And so basically, if you're using it a lot, you might not want to have something that's super aggressive. I wouldn't recommend having something super aggressive for the most part anyway, but you can kind of see these two have similar pounds per square inch just because there's so many little points. If this was like a 5-star, it would kind of dig and roll. And that is a good thing when you need it. But for the most part, I like to go with a pretty conservative rowel. I'll put this rowel up next to this homemade rowel made out of a quarter. This would be much softer than this. Obviously not so much different that you would scare one if you switch from one to the other, but that's kind of the thought there. So how long your legs are, what you're going to use it for, and then style is a big part too. I'm a big plain Jane, keep it easy kind of guy, and so none of mine really are ornate. Nothing's really fancy and pretty on them. Some of them are augmented in different ways. Actually, I'll move on to that and just show you a couple augmentations. So this is a small roper spur, and the reason why I call it a roper spur is the shank is really small. So if I'm going to pick my leg up to bump them, I'm going to have to pick my leg up anyway, so I wouldn't be roping and holding my feet in a spot. I'd probably have my foot come out and go ahead and bump them. Don't recommend using that all the time, but this one, I took the rowel out and bent the shank over just so that I can just turn my toe out and give a bump. I do not use these much because that's a lot of pounds per square inch in that section. That would hurt one if you were having to use them a lot. This is another augmentation. I'll show you one more time. So this is one that I put my own rowel in. There's lots of ways to do that. We might make a video of how to replace rowels. This is how to replace rowels on a budget. Works really good. Not that heartbroken when I lose a rowel because it's just 25 cents. So that's pretty awesome. I'll show you another set of spurs that I personally don't get use out of, but this is an option for you. So if you think you need something while riding, but you don't necessarily want to introduce a long shank and a rowel to your horse, you can have these. I don't even know what these are called. I've seen people use them, but technically here's your pounds per square inch, similar to where it is on a rowel. You can see this would be super mild. So you have a horse that maybe leans on you from time to time and you want to have a gentle way to tell them to stop leaning on you. This would be something that you could try. Once again, I don't use them because I feel like I do a pretty good job of being a horseman with the ones that I have. So those are kind of just some different spurs. Think about your legs, why you're going to use them. Don't just go get something because it's pretty, because it might not work really well for your function. The last thing I'm going to show you is the Spur Strap. And there's definitely some, not etiquette, but ways you should do it and should not do it. I'll just go with this basic one first. So this is kind of what you'll see in a lot of places, where you have a buckle on one side and then this loop on the other. In a lot of parts of the country, it's customary to wear this on the outside. It's not exclusive. I've seen people do it the other way. I do it this way for comfort because I don't really want this buckle on the inside where my foot is touching the stirrup. To me, it digs on my foot. Some people, they don't feel that way, but that's kind of why I put my buckle on the outside. So real quick, I'm going to show you how you would put a spur on a boot. This is a lettuce picker or a buckaroo boot. It's the same process whether you have a heel or not. So you would put it on just like this with your strap to the outside. And if you don't have a strap on it, then you can put one on, slide it over there. It's going to sit on what is called the spur shelf. So if you're putting spurs on something without a spur shelf, yes, it will work, but it'll stay where it's supposed to stay. Then you'll wrap it over the boot and then hook it on. If you're having trouble with this whole process, take it off. Go ahead and hook it. I'm going to show you that. You just go through this little slit, hook it. Okay, just like that's ready to go. Then you can slide the whole operation over the top. A lot of cases, people have just riding boots, so you might not have to take this off. So that's just kind of how you put that on. So if for some reason you're riding a setup and you were to get your leg through or your spur hooked in a cinch, something like that, you would want this leather to break. So I'm going to have you come in close here, and I'm going to show you what I've done differently between these two. Okay, so this is the normal slit that is cut in there. This one I have cut through the stitching up to this hole right there, and I've done the same thing on the other side. So in theory, if I got in a wreck in this setup, this would break free. Yes, I might lose a spur, but I'd keep my leg and probably my life. So think about that if you're riding stuff outside, roping a lot. Where could I be safer? And I know that might seem like this wouldn't last as long, but I'd rather be replacing spur straps than appendages at the orthopedic surgeon. This last thing is another way of doing a spur strap. I know a lot of people that make their own. You can take this and lay it on a piece of leather, cut it out, and you'd have your own. I actually use old pieces of latigo that are breaking down, cut them to size, use the same holes that are there, and once again I cut so that this is really safe. These seem to break more often, but I feel pretty safe, on a young colt going outside with those. So this is just a simple overview on spurs. There's a lot of things you can go through to talk about why they work the way they work, but that's just a little overview. Hopefully it helps you. So if you like this video and want to see more videos just like this, please like and subscribe to the Startup Cowboy channel.